I walked into my parents' house on Christmas morning with a check for $250,000 in my purse, my bonus, the biggest of my career. I was 30 years old and I had just saved my company $15 million with an AI system I built from scratch. I couldn't wait to share the news with my family. I couldn't wait to see them proud of me for once. The house was silent when I opened the door. Too silent. I found them in the dining room. My father Rick, my mother, Patricia, and my brother Chad. All three of them sitting at the mahogany table I had bought them, glasses of expensive wine in their hands, documents spread across the surface. They looked up when I walked in, and the expressions on their faces made my blood run cold. "Oh, good you're here," my father said, not standing, not smiling. "Saves us a phone call." My mother pushed a document across the table toward me. "Sign this." I picked it up. It was a property transfer form. For my apartment. My $2.4 million apartment in Tribeca that I had bought with my own money that I owned outright. They wanted me to sign it over to Chad. "What is this?" My voice came out as a whisper. "It's time you contributed properly to this family," Rick said, leaning back in his chair like a king on his throne. "Chad needs a place in Manhattan for his new business. You can move somewhere cheaper. You don't need all that space anyway." I looked at my mother, waiting for her to tell me this was a joke. Instead, she took a sip of her wine and said, "Don't be dramatic, Anya. You're single. You don't have kids. Chad has a future to build. This is what family does. We help each other." "Help each other," I repeated. "I've given you over $2 million in the past 10 years. I bought this house. I fund your entire lifestyle. I've bankrolled every one of Chad's failed businesses. And now we need more." Chad said, that smug smile on his face. "Come on, sis. You make plenty of money. You'll buy another apartment. This one should stay in the family, the real family." The real family. I looked down at the documents again. They had already forged my signature on several pages. I could see it, the clumsy attempt to replicate my handwriting. They weren't asking me to sign. They were showing me what they had already done. This was a formality, a courtesy. They had already tried to steal my home. "You forged my signature," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Don't be so dramatic." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "We're your parents. What's yours is ours. That's how family works." I set the documents down carefully on the table. I looked at each of them. My father, who had never once told me he was proud of me. My mother, who had spent 30 years comparing me to my brother and finding me lacking. My brother, who had lived off my success while treating me like garbage. And something inside me snapped. Not broke. Snapped. Like a cable under too much tension. "No," I said quietly. "No!" Rick's face darkened. "Anya, you don't get to say no. We're your family. We raised you. You owe us." "I owe you. I picked up the forged documents. You tried to steal my home. You forged legal documents. That's not family. That's crime." "How dare you!" Patricia stood up, her face flushed. "After everything we've done for you, we gave you life. We gave you a home. We gave you everything. And this is how you repay us by accusing us of being criminals." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw it clearly for the first time. She actually believed this. She actually believed that giving birth to me entitled her to everything I had earned. She believed my success was theirs to claim. "You're right," I said softly. "This is how I repay you." I took the forged documents, folded them carefully, and put them in my purse. Evidence. Then I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Right there in front of them, I transferred every penny out of the joint account. $450,000. I moved it to a new account they couldn't access. "What are you doing?" Rick's voice rose in panic. "I'm closing the bank," I said. Then I called my financial advisor. "David, it's Anya Petrova. I need you to freeze the Sterling Family Trust immediately. Yes, all of it. And I need the name of the best litigation attorney you know. I'm filing criminal charges for attempted fraud and identity theft." "You wouldn't dare," Chad said, but his voice wavered. I ended the call and looked at my brother. "Watch me." That was 6 months ago. What I did next destroyed them completely, and I don't regret a single second of it. But before I tell you how I made them pay, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the one who gave everything and got nothing in return, hit that like button and subscribe. You're going to want to see how this story ends. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to walk away from family? because what I'm about to share with you is the most brutal, most satisfying revenge story you've ever heard. Let me take you back to where it really started. Let me take you back to that Christmas dinner 6 months before this moment, the night they planted the seeds of their own destruction. The Sterling family Christmas dinner. The mahogany table I bought them for $75,000. The Chateau Margaux wine I ordered $250 per bottle. The Waterford crystal, the Christoffel silver, the Persian rugs. Everything in that house came from my bank account. Everything they owned I had paid for. And I was about to take it all back. The smell of roasted turkey filled the air that Christmas evening, mingling with the scent of expensive wine. Chateau Margaux, 2015, $250 a bottle. I knew because I had ordered a case of it the week before, when my father mentioned wanting to impress some of his golf buddies. The crystal glasses catching the candlelight were Waterford, a gift I had given them last year. The silver cutlery was Christoffel, another gift. Even the paintings on the walls, the Persian rugs under our feet, the sound system playing soft classical music in the background, all of it had come from my bank account. I sat at the far end of the table, my usual spot, the one that seemed to get further and further away from the center of attention with each passing year. I was 30 years old, a senior software engineer at Technova, one of the most prestigious tech companies in New York. I had just completed the AI optimization project that would revolutionize how the company handled data processing, a project that had consumed my life for the past 8 months. 80 to 90-hour weeks, sleeping in my office, missing birthdays, holidays, social events. All of it worth it when the CEO, Marcus Chen, personally called me into his office and handed me a bonus check for $250,000. "Anya," he had said, shaking my hand with genuine warmth, "you just saved this company $15 million annually. This is the future. You built the future." I had walked out of his office feeling 10 feet tall, feeling like all the sacrifices had been worth it. I couldn't wait to tell my family, couldn't wait to see the pride in their eyes. I had rehearsed it in my head during the drive over. How I would casually mention the project, how they would ask questions, how I would explain the technical challenges I had overcome, how maybe finally they would see me the way Marcus Chen saw me, as someone brilliant, as someone valuable, as someone worthy of pride. I was exhausted running on 4 hours of sleep for the past month, but I had dragged myself to this dinner because this was what you did. You showed up for family. You tried. You kept trying even when every instinct told you to stop. My brother Chad sat at the head of the table right next to our father, the seat usually reserved for the guest of honor. At 32, Chad was everything our parents wanted in a son, at least on the surface. 6'2" athletic build, maintained by a personal trainer, he couldn't afford a smile that had charmed his way through countless failed ventures. He was wearing a Tom Ford suit, navy blue, with a subtle pinstripe, probably $5,000 if it was real. I suspected it wasn't. Chad had a habit of buying knockoffs and passing them off as authentic. He was currently holding court, gesturing wildly with his wine glass, a Rolex on his wrist that I knew for a fact was purchased with money from the family trust. My money. The watch alone was $45,000. For someone who had never held a job for more than 6 months, Chad certainly lived well. "So here's the genius of it," Chad was saying, his voice filled with that artificial enthusiasm he always used when pitching his latest scheme. "Everyone talks about grocery delivery, right? But nobody's doing it fast enough. What if we could deliver groceries in under 10 minutes? 10 minutes. People are impatient. They want instant gratification. We'll call it Quick Cart. I'm thinking sleek branding, lime green and black, really modern, really urban." "That's brilliant, son," my father boomed, raising his glass. Rick Sterling was 60 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, with silver hair that he kept meticulously styled. He had been an insurance salesman back in the day, moderately successful, the kind of success that paid for a comfortable middle-class life. Then I had gone to MIT on a full scholarship, graduated top of my class, and started pulling in a 6-figure salary by the time I was 23. That's when Rick decided to retire early. At 54 years old, he hung up his sales pitches and decided to become a full-time golf enthusiast and wine connoisseur. Both expensive hobbies. Both funded entirely by me. "You're going to put the Sterling name on the map," Rick continued, his chest puffing out with vicarious pride. I always knew you had it in you. Remember when you were 8 years old and you set up that lemonade stand? I knew right then, this kid is going places. The lemonade stand story. I had heard it 1,000 times. What Rick conveniently forgot was that I had also set up a lemonade stand when I was 8. Mine had actually made money $57 over a weekend because I had done market research, interviewed neighbors about their preferences, created a menu with multiple options, and kept detailed financial records in a notebook. Chad's lemonade stand had lost money because he drank half the inventory and gave away the rest to his friends. But nobody remembered my lemonade stand, just Chad's. My mother. Patricia, sitting to Rick's right, nodded enthusiastically, her diamond earrings catching the light. 4-carat studs, her birthday present from me last year. She was 58, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, courtesy of a salon that charged $400 per appointment, wearing a Chanel dress that I had bought her for Mother's Day, the diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist, another gift from me. Patricia had never worked a day in her adult life. She had gone from her father's house to Rick's house and now, effectively, to my house. Her entire identity was wrapped up in being Mrs. Sterling, mother of the golden boy. "Our Chad is going places," she cooed, reaching over to pat his hand affectionately. "He's got that entrepreneurial spirit, a real visionary, not like these young people today who just want to work for someone else their whole lives." The jab was directed at me. It always was. Patricia had a talent for making comments that seemed general but were specifically designed to diminish me. Working for someone else was apparently shameful. Never mind that I was working for one of the top tech companies in the world, leading projects that would be featured in industry journals, building systems that would influence the entire sector. To Patricia, if you weren't running your own business, you were just an employee. Just ordinary. I cleared my throat, trying to find an opening in their praise. I had been sitting here for 20 minutes watching them fawn over Chad, waiting for a natural break in the conversation. This was my chance. "Actually," I said, raising my voice slightly to be heard over their chatter, "I wanted to share some good news too. The AI optimization project I've been working on went live last week. We reduced server costs by 40% across the entire company. That's $15 million in savings annually. The CEO personally called me into his office to thank me. He said it's going to change how the entire industry thinks about data processing." I could hear the pride in my own voice, the excitement I couldn't quite hide. This was a big deal. This was career-defining work. People would study this project in computer science programs. My name would be in technical papers. This was my lemonade stand moment, except it actually mattered. The words hung in the air for a moment. My father glanced at me, his expression polite but distant, the way you might look at an acquaintance who was telling you about their day. Then he looked back at Chad, and I saw his face light up again with genuine interest. "That's nice, Anya," Rick said, his tone perfunctory. "You always were good with computers. But let's be honest, sitting behind a screen typing code isn't exactly building something from the ground up like Chad is doing. Anyone can follow instructions and fix technical problems. What Chad is doing takes real vision, real leadership." The dismissal hit me like a physical blow. "Anyone can do what I do." That's what he was saying. 4 years at MIT, 8 years climbing the corporate ladder, 80-hour weeks, breakthroughs that would change my industry. And to my father, it was just following instructions. "Dad!" I tried again, keeping my voice steady. "I didn't fix a technical problem. I built an entire new system from scratch. I led a team of 12 engineers. The architecture I designed is—" "Anya, sweetie," my mother interrupted, not even looking at me, her eyes fixed on her wine glass. "Can you pass the salt? And really, all that technical jargon is so boring. Nobody understands what you're talking about. Chad, tell us more about QuickCart. Have you thought about the branding, the marketing strategy?" I passed the salt, my hand steady, even though my heart was cracking. This was normal. This was just another dinner with the Sterlings. This was my life. I told myself the same thing I always told myself. They don't understand technology. It's not personal. They're just more interested in entrepreneurship. It's fine. Everything is fine. Chad launched back into his spiel, and I watched him, really watched him as he spoke. The way he gestured with his hands, the way his voice rose with excitement, the way our parents leaned in, hanging on every word. He was describing an app that would require massive infrastructure millions in startup capital partnerships with grocery chains, a fleet of delivery drivers, sophisticated logistics software. He had none of these things. He didn't even have a business plan. I knew because 2 months ago he had asked me to introduce him to some venture capitalists I knew, and when I asked to see his pitch deck, he had gotten defensive and changed the subject. But our parents didn't ask about business plans or feasibility studies or market research. They just believed. They believed because it was Chad and Chad could do no wrong. The infrastructure costs alone would be astronomical, I said quietly, unable to help myself. You'd need millions in seed funding just to launch in one city, and the profit margins on grocery delivery are razor thin. Most companies in this space are losing money. Chad's eyes flashed with irritation. Not if you do it right. That's the whole point. We're going to disrupt the model. With what capital? What's your customer acquisition cost, your unit economics? Jesus, Anya! Chad snapped, setting his wine glass down hard enough that it sloshed. Why do you always have to be so negative, so analytical? Can't you just be supportive for once? I'm being realistic, I said. I'm trying to help you avoid— We don't need your help. Patricia interjected sharply, her voice cold. Chad doesn't need you poking holes in his dreams. That's always been your problem, Anya. You're so focused on why things won't work that you can't see the possibilities. Chad is a dreamer. You're just a worker bee. A worker bee. I let the words sink in. A worker bee who funded their entire lifestyle. A worker bee who had contributed over $2 million to this family in the past 10 years. A worker bee whose work was apparently too boring and technical to warrant even basic respect. I looked down at my plate at the food I hadn't touched. I wasn't hungry anymore. I never was at these dinners. The knot in my stomach made eating impossible. The dinner continued in this vein for another excruciating 40 minutes. Every time I tried to contribute to the conversation, I was either ignored or shut down. Every time Chad spoke, it was met with applause and adoration. I watched my parents really watched them, and I saw something I had been blind to my entire life. They didn't just prefer Chad. They actively disliked me. My success bothered them. My accomplishments weren't achievements to celebrate, they were threats to manage. Every promotion I earned made Chad look bad by comparison. Every award I won was a reminder that their golden boy couldn't hold a job. My very existence was an inconvenience. I thought back to other dinners, other holidays, other moments I had explained away. The time I won the Grace Hopper Award for Technical Innovation and they skipped the ceremony because Chad had a pitch meeting. The time I bought my first apartment and they spent the entire housewarming party talking about Chad's new business idea. The time I was featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 and my mother's only comment was, they must have had a slow year. Every single achievement in my life had been diminished, dismissed, or ignored, and every single failure of Chad's had been reframed as a learning experience, a temporary setback, a sign of his ambition. My Aunt Carol and Uncle David were also at the dinner sitting across from me, and I noticed they were avoiding eye contact. Carol had been there the day I graduated from MIT with highest honors. She had seen the pride on my face, the tears in my eyes when I walked across that stage. But when we got back to the house for the celebration dinner, the entire conversation had been about Chad's new girlfriend and how serious the relationship was. Nobody asked about my plans. Nobody asked about my job offers from Google and Microsoft. Nobody asked about anything, and Carol had said nothing. She had just smiled and nodded along with my parents complicit in my erasure. Then came the moment that changed everything, the moment I couldn't explain away, the moment that made the truth undeniable. My father stood up slightly tipsy from the wine and raised his glass. The room fell silent, everyone turning to look at him. Rick had that commanding presence, that ability to make people pay attention. It was what had made him a successful salesman, that charisma, that confidence. "I want to make a toast," he announced, his voice booming through the dining room. The candlelight flickered across his face, casting shadows that made him look almost sinister. "To my son, Chad, the Sterling who's going to make us proud, the Sterling who understands what family means, the Sterling who has the courage to take risks and build something real." He paused, looking around the table, making sure everyone was listening. His eyes passed over me without stopping, without acknowledging I was even there. "You know what? Rick continued, and there was something in his voice now, something cruel and satisfied. Sometimes Patricia and I talk about how much simpler life would be if Chad was our only child. No complications, no drama, no judgment, just pure sterling excellence. Just a son who makes us proud every single day. The room went dead silent. I heard the clock ticking in the hallway. I heard the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I heard someone's sharp intake of breath. I think it was Aunt Carol, but I couldn't be sure because all I could see was my father's face, and the expression on it wasn't regret or shock at what he had just said. It was satisfaction. He meant it, every word. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say something, anything to contradict him. Waiting for her to stand up and tell him he had gone too far, that he was drunk, that he didn't mean it. Instead, Patricia's face softened with affection as she looked at Chad. Then she smiled that small, satisfied smile I had seen 1,000 times, and she nodded. She agreed with him. My mother agreed that she wished I didn't exist. Chad looked uncomfortable for maybe half a second, his eyes darting to me, then away. But then his expression morphed into something else. Smugness, self-satisfaction, vindication. He raised his own glass and said, "Well, Dad, you know I'd do anything for this family. Anything at all." The emphasis on anything sent a chill down my spine. My Aunt Carol was staring at her plate, her face red. Uncle David coughed awkwardly, but neither of them said anything. Neither of them objected. Neither of them pointed out how cruel, how devastatingly cruel those words were, which meant this wasn't news to them. This wasn't a shocking revelation. This was just the truth finally being spoken out loud. My family had been wishing I didn't exist all along. They had just been polite enough not to say it. Until now, I felt something inside me crack, but it wasn't the crack of breaking. It was the crack of ice forming. Cold, absolute, clarifying. It was as if a fog I had been living in for 30 years suddenly lifted and I could see everything with perfect, painful clarity. I had spent my entire life trying to earn love from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it to me. I had poured money, time, energy, and tears into a bottomless pit, hoping that eventually, if I just gave enough, if I just achieved enough, if I just proved my worth enough, they would finally see me. They would finally love me. But you can't earn love by being useful. You can't earn love by being valuable. Either people love you for who you are, or they don't love you at all. And my family didn't love me. They tolerated me because I was profitable, because I was the golden goose that funded their lifestyle. The moment I stopped being useful, the moment I stopped writing checks, they would have no use for me whatsoever. And they had just told me as much. I set down my fork and knife very carefully, the metallic clink against the china plate, the only sound in the room. My hands were steady. My breath was even. I felt strangely calm, like I was watching this scene from outside my body. Then I did something I had never done before. I smiled. Not a warm smile, not a sad smile. A cold, calculated smile that seemed to unnerve even my father. I saw him blink, saw uncertainty flicker across his face for just a moment. "If that's what you want," I said, my voice steady and quiet, but carrying through the room like a blade, "then I'll make it happen." I reached up and unclasped the family heirloom necklace my mother had given me on my 21st birthday. It was a Victorian diamond and pearl necklace passed down through 3 generations of sterling women. Patricia had made a huge production of giving it to me, telling me it symbolized my place in the family, my connection to our history. I had worn it to every important event since then, even though I preferred simpler jewelry. I wore it because it was supposed to mean something. But it meant nothing. It was just a pretty cage. I placed it carefully on the table in front of my mother. The diamonds caught the light, sparkling mockingly beautiful and cold and utterly meaningless. "Consider this my resignation from the Sterling family," I said. "Anya," my mother started, but I held up a hand. "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to speak right now. You had 30 years to speak up. You had 30 years to defend me, to value me, to see me as more than a bank account. And you chose silence. You chose complicity. You chose him." I gestured to my father. "So now I'm choosing me." I stood up, grabbed my coat from the back of the chair and my purse from the sideboard. Behind me, I heard confused murmuring, my mother's sharp intake of breath, my father's sputtering attempt to say something. "Anya, wait, what are you?" Rick's voice had lost its commanding tone. He sounded uncertain now, maybe even scared. "Goodbye," I said without turning around. "Enjoy your simple life." I walked out of that house and got into my car, the door closing behind me with a finality that echoed through the quiet winter night. I sat in the driver's seat key in the ignition, but I didn't start the car immediately. I just sat there, letting the full weight of what had happened wash over me. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I was calm, terrifyingly calm. Because for the first time in my life, I saw everything clearly. I saw the pattern. I saw 30 years of being treated like an inconvenience, like a resource to be mined, rather than a person to be loved. I saw the thousands of times I had made excuses for them, convinced myself they didn't mean it, told myself that family was family no matter what. But family didn't wish you out of existence. Family didn't look at your success with resentment. Family didn't treat you like an ATM with a pulse. As I started the car and drove through the empty streets back to my apartment in Manhattan, my mind was already working, processing, planning. I was a software engineer. I was good at breaking down complex systems, identifying inefficiencies, debugging problems, and optimizing for better performance. And right now, my family was the most inefficient, broken, toxic system I had ever encountered. They wanted Chad to be their only child. I would give them exactly what they asked for. But they were about to learn a very expensive lesson about what that actually meant. The drive back to my apartment took 45 minutes through light Christmas night traffic. I lived in a luxury building in Tribeca, a 3-bedroom corner unit on the 32nd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River. I had bought it outright 3 years ago for $2.4 million. No mortgage, no debt, just mine. I let myself in, kicked off my heels, and walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, and for a moment I didn't recognize myself. When had I become this person? This woman who accepted crumbs of affection and called it a feast? This woman who begged for scraps of acknowledgement and called it family? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Sarah Jenkins. Sarah and I had been friends since college roommates at MIT Partners in Crime through 4 years of brutal engineering coursework. While I had gone into corporate tech, Sarah had gone to law school, graduated top of her class from Columbia, and now worked as a partner at one of the most prestigious corporate law firms in Manhattan. She specialized in complex financial litigation, asset protection, and family law. If anyone could help me dismantle my life with surgical precision, it was Sarah. It was 10:30 at night on Christmas, but I called anyway. Sarah answered on the second ring. "Anya, what's wrong?" Her voice was immediately alert, concerned. Sarah knew me well enough to know I wouldn't call on Christmas unless something was very wrong. I need your help," I said. "Professional help. I need to extract myself from my family financially and legally. I need to do it correctly, thoroughly, and I need to do it now." There was a pause. Then Sarah said, "I'm coming over. Give me 20 minutes. Sarah arrived in 18 minutes, still wearing her Christmas dinner clothes, a bottle of wine in one hand and her tablet in the other. She took one look at my face and said, "Talk." I told her everything, not just about the dinner, but about everything. I told her about the family trust I had set up when I was 25, naively thinking it would help my parents retire comfortably. I told her how that trust had ballooned from $100,000 to over $2 million, all from my contributions. I told her about Chad's failed businesses, the lemonade stand that never ended, the $500,000 I had poured into ventures that never produced anything but excuses. I told her about the house in Westchester that my parents lived in, the one that was technically owned by an LLC I had created, but that they had full access to. I told her about the cars, the credit cards, the loans, the lifestyle they lived entirely on my dime. And then I told her about tonight, about Rick's toast, about Patricia's nod, about the smile on Chad's face. When I finished, Sarah sat back on my couch, her expression a mixture of fury and determination. "Anya," she said carefully, "what you're describing isn't just family dysfunction. This is financial exploitation. You've been systematically drained for over a decade, and based on what you're telling me about Chad forging documents, this might cross into criminal territory." "What do you mean, forging documents?" Sarah opened her tablet and pulled up a notes app. "You mentioned Chad took out loans in the family trust's name. Did you sign off on those?" "No, he said he handled it. He said it was just administrative paperwork." Anya, if he signed documents on your behalf without your explicit consent, especially for loans or financial instruments, that's forgery. That's fraud. If he used your identity, your credit, or your assets without permission, that's identity theft. She looked at me seriously. How many times has this happened? I thought back over the years, and my stomach dropped. I don't know. Maybe 3 or 4 times he would say he needed my signature on documents, but I never actually reviewed them. I just trusted him. Never trust family with money, Sarah said grimly. That's rule number 1. We're going to need to do a complete forensic audit. Every document, every transaction, every business venture. If Chad has been committing fraud, we need to know the extent of it. What are my options? I asked. Sarah tapped her pen against her tablet, thinking. We have several paths forward, and they're not mutually exclusive. First, we freeze the family trust immediately. Cut off all access. Second, we initiate legal proceedings to reclaim any assets that are technically yours, but that they've been using. The house, the cars, anything in your name. Third, we do a full forensic audit of Chad's businesses to determine if fraud occurred. If it did, you can file criminal charges or use it as leverage. Leverage for what? For complete separation. Anya, here's the hard truth. If you go nuclear with this, if you file charges and expose everything, your family will be devastated. Your parents could lose everything. Chad could go to jail. But if you want them out of your life completely and permanently, sometimes you need leverage to ensure they stay away. The threat of prosecution can be a powerful motivator for cooperation. I stood up and walked to the window looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, my family was probably still sitting in that dining room, maybe confused, maybe angry, maybe already planning how to reel me back in. They had no idea what was coming. I want out, I said quietly. Completely. I want every tie severed, every financial connection cut, every obligation ended, and I want them to understand that they did this to themselves. Then let's get to work, Sarah said. We spent the next 6 hours going through documents. Sarah called in a favor from a colleague who specialized in forensic accounting, and by 6 in the morning we had a preliminary plan. It was brutal, it was comprehensive, and it was completely legal. The family trust would be frozen effective immediately. All automatic payments would stop. The house in Westchester would go through eviction proceedings since they had no lease and weren't paying rent. The cars that were in my name would be reclaimed. The credit cards would be canceled. Every financial tentacle I had extended to my family would be retracted one by one. But Sarah had also suggested something else, something that made my blood run cold, but that I couldn't deny was necessary. We need to investigate Chad's businesses, she said as the sun started to rise over Manhattan. All of them, every single venture you funded. Because if I'm right, and I usually am, we're going to find a pattern of fraud that goes way beyond sloppy bookkeeping. And when we do, you're going to have a choice to make about how to proceed. How long will that take? A full forensic audit, 2 to 3 weeks if we push hard. I know a brilliant investigator used to work for the SEC. He can tear through financial records like nobody's business. People call him the shark because once he gets his teeth into something, he doesn't let go. Hire him, I said without hesitation, whatever it costs. Anya, this is going to be expensive. We're talking maybe $50,000 to $75,000 for a full investigation. I laughed, actually laughed. Sarah, I've given my family over $2 million. I've spent $75,000 on a single failed business venture for Chad. I think I can afford to spend that much on the truth. All right, Sarah said, standing up and gathering her things. I'll file the paperwork today to freeze the trust. It'll take effect within 72 hours. In the meantime, go to the bank yourself and make sure they can't access any accounts that are solely in your name. Change passwords, set up 2-factor authentication, and for God's sake, don't answer their calls until we have everything locked down. They're going to panic, I said. Good, Sarah replied. Let them panic. They've had 30 years of security at your expense. It's time they experienced a little uncertainty. After Sarah left, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat at my laptop and started going through my financial records, really looking at them for the first time in years. I had been so focused on earning money that I hadn't paid attention to where it was going. That was changing now. The trust fund showed regular withdrawals. $30,000 here, $50,000 there. Sometimes smaller amounts, $5,000 or $10,000, just enough not to trigger any red flags. Over 10 years, it added up to an astronomical sum. But it wasn't just the trust. I found credit card statements in my email cards I had co-signed for my parents that showed charges for luxury items, vacations, jewelry, high-end restaurants. They lived like millionaires on my income. And Chad. Oh, Chad. I found bank statements for accounts I didn't even remember opening business accounts for LLCs with names like Sterling Innovations and Quick Start Technologies and half a dozen others. Each one showed large deposits from me, sometimes $50,000, sometimes $100,000, followed by withdrawals for things that had nothing to do with business development. Cash withdrawals, transfers to personal accounts, charges at luxury car dealerships and watch boutiques. I felt sick, physically sick. How had I been this blind? For 2 days, I went silent. Completely silent. I didn't answer calls. I didn't respond to texts. I used the time to systematically lock down every financial avenue. I changed every password. I enabled every security feature. I moved money from accounts my family knew about to new accounts at different banks. I worked with Sarah to file the legal paperwork to freeze the trust and initiate eviction proceedings. And I waited. The first call came on day 3. It was my mother, her voice tight with controlled anger. Anya, we need to talk. What is going on? The credit card was declined at the grocery store today. This is embarrassing. Fix it. Not, are you okay? Not, we're worried about you. Not, let's talk about what happened. Just fix it. Fix the money. Fix the inconvenience I was causing them. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. The second call came an hour later. Rick this time, his voice booming with authority. Anya Marie Sterling, you call me back right now. I don't know what childish tantrum you're throwing, but it ends today. We are your family. You have responsibilities. Call me back. Responsibilities. That word again. My responsibility to fund them. My responsibility to tolerate their abuse. My responsibility to disappear quietly and not make waves. I deleted the voicemail. By day 4, the calls became frantic. Patricia called 6 times. Rick called 8 times. Even Chad called, which was notable because Chad never called me unless he wanted something. I ignored them all. On day 5, Sarah called. The trust is officially frozen. All access is terminated. The eviction notice was served this morning. They have 60 days. How did they react? According to the process server, your father tried to refuse the documents. He claimed there must be some mistake that his daughter would never do this. Your mother started crying. Chad wasn't there. Good, I said. I felt nothing. No guilt, no sadness, just a cold sense of satisfaction. Anya, Sarah said carefully, they're going to escalate. This is the part where they're going to try everything. Guilt, anger, manipulation, threats? Are you ready for that? I'm ready, I said, and I meant it. The escalation came on day 6. I was at work sitting in a meeting with my team when my assistant knocked on the conference room door. I'm so sorry to interrupt, Jen said, looking uncomfortable. But there's a situation in the lobby. Your mother is here. She's refusing to leave until she speaks with you. Security is about to call the police. Every head in the conference room turned to look at me. My face burned with embarrassment. This was my professional space. This was where I was respected, where I was valued, and Patricia had just invaded it. Excuse me, I said to my team, maintaining my composure. I'll handle this. I took the elevator down to the lobby, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and humiliation. When the doors opened, I saw my mother standing in the middle of the sleek modern lobby of Technova's headquarters, crying loudly, making a scene. She was wearing her expensive coat, her expensive jewelry playing the role of the devastated mother. 2 security guards stood nearby looking uncertain. My mother was good at making herself the victim. Anya! Patricia rushed toward me when she saw me, her arms outstretched. Thank God! Baby, we need to talk. Please, you have to fix this. The bank, the cards, everything is shut off. We can't even buy groceries. How could you do this to us? I stepped back before she could touch me, maintaining physical distance. Everyone in the lobby was watching now. Employees I worked with, people I respected. And here was my mother causing a scene, trying to manipulate me in front of them. You need to leave, I said quietly. This is my workplace. This is inappropriate. Inappropriate! Patricia's voice rose to a near shriek. I'm your mother. You're cutting off your own parents. Do you know what the neighbors are saying? Do you know how humiliating this is? Humiliating, I repeated. You're concerned about humiliation, not about what you did, not about what Dad said, just about how it looks. He was drunk. He didn't mean it. Patricia grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. You're destroying this family over a stupid comment. You're destroying us because your feelings got hurt. Grow up, Anya. I pulled my arm away hard enough that she stumbled. The security guards moved closer. Ma'am, one of them said firmly, you need to leave the premises now or we'll call the police. I'm not leaving until my daughter fixes this, Patricia shouted. She owes us. We raised her. We gave her everything. You gave me nothing, I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria. You tolerated my existence as long as I was useful. The moment I asked for basic respect, you made it clear I wasn't wanted. So, congratulations, Mom. You got your wish. I'm gone, but so is my money. How dare you! Patricia's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful, selfish little bitch, after everything we sacrificed for you. The lobby had gone completely silent. I could see people recording on their phones. This would be on social media within the hour. Patricia had just destroyed any sympathy she might have had. Security, please escort my mother out of the building, I said calmly, and add her to the banned visitors list. If she returns, call the police immediately. You can't do this, Patricia screamed as the security guards took her arms. I'm your mother! No, I said. You're a stranger who shares my DNA. There's a difference. I turned and walked back to the elevators, my head held high even though inside I was shaking. Behind me, I could hear Patricia's screams echoing through the lobby until the doors closed and silence descended. Back in my office, I sat at my desk and put my head in my hands. My phone buzzed immediately. It was Sarah. I just saw the video. It's already on Twitter. Are you okay? Define okay, I said. Do you need me to file a restraining order? I thought about it. Not yet, but have the paperwork ready. I think this is just beginning. I was right. That night, I received a text from Chad. We need to talk. Dad's in the hospital. My heart clenched despite everything. What happened? Stress. Mom says you stressed him out so much he had a heart attack. If he dies, it's on you. I stared at the message for a long moment. This was manipulation, pure and simple. This was them trying to guilt me into backing down. But there was a small part of me that wondered, what if it was true? What if I had pushed too far? I called Sarah. Chad says Rick is in the hospital. Heart attack. He's blaming me. What hospital? He didn't say. Then it's probably bullshit, but I'll call around and check. If it's real, we'll deal with it. If it's fake, we'll add it to the list of manipulation tactics. 20 minutes later, Sarah called back. I checked every hospital in the area. There's no Richard Sterling admitted anywhere. It's a lie, Anya. They're trying to manipulate you. The relief was quickly replaced by fury. They had tried to use a fake medical emergency to control me. They had gone that low. I texted Chad back. I checked. Dad's not in any hospital. Try again. His response came quickly. Fine, but you're still destroying this family. Mom is having a breakdown. This is all your fault. I blocked his number. The next 2 weeks were a barrage of attempts to get me to back down. My Aunt Carol called, trying the reasonable relative approach. Anya, honey, I know they're not perfect, but they're family. Can't we all just sit down and talk this through? I told her no and hung up. My Uncle David sent an email telling me I was making a mistake I'd regret for the rest of my life. I deleted it without responding. An old family friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, reached out on Facebook with a long message about the importance of forgiveness and family bonds. I blocked them. They tried every angle, every approach, but I held firm because I knew what this was. This wasn't love. This wasn't concern. This was panic. They were losing their meal ticket and they were desperate to get it back. On week 3, Sarah called with news about the forensic audit. Anya, you need to come to my office. Now. It's bad. It's worse than we thought. I took a sick day from work and went straight to Sarah's office. She met me at the door with a grim expression and led me to her conference room where a thin, sharp-eyed man in his 50s sat surrounded by documents and 3 laptops. Anya, this is Marcus Chin, no relation to your CEO, different spelling. Marcus is the forensic accountant I told you about, the shark. Marcus, why don't you walk Anya through what you found? Marcus Chin looked at me with something like sympathy in his eyes, which immediately made me nervous. Ms. Petrova, he said formally, I've been doing this work for 23 years. I've investigated Ponzi schemes, embezzlement rings, elaborate insurance frauds. What your brother has done ranks in the top 5 most brazen cases I've ever seen. He opened one of his laptops and turned it toward me. Let's start with the basics. Over the past 10 years, you've contributed approximately $2.1 million to your family through various channels. The trust fund, direct payments, business investments, personal loans, credit cards. Of that, $2.1 million, approximately $460,000 went directly to your brother Chad for his various business ventures. I knew it was a lot, I said, but seeing the number... That's not the shocking part, Marcus said. The shocking part is what he did with that $460,000. Based on my analysis of his business accounts, bank statements, credit card records, and various documents, he was sloppy enough to leave digital trails of here's the breakdown. And the rest, I felt like I was going to be sick. That's fraud.